You turn down the invitation. You tell yourself it's fine. You'll stay in tonight. Maybe watch something. Maybe just sit in silence for a while. And for a moment, there's that quiet relief. No pressure to talk. No need to be on. No worrying about what to say next or how you're coming across. Just space. But then, almost immediately, a thought slips in. Is this normal? Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that enjoying being alone too much must mean something is off, that maybe you're avoiding people, maybe you're missing out, maybe you're slowly disconnecting from the world without realizing it. But here's the part most people miss. The people who genuinely enjoy being alone aren't empty, they're full. And this is where it gets interesting, because the trait they usually share isn't something obvious like being introverted or quiet. It's something deeper. They have a rich inner world. Now that sounds simple, but stay with me for a second because it explains more than you think. Think about the last time you were alone with no distractions, no phone, no music, no background noise. What happened? For some people, that silence feels uncomfortable. Their mind starts searching for something to grab onto, a notification, a conversation, anything to fill the gap. But for others, that's when everything actually starts. Thoughts begin to unfold, ideas connect, memories replay in a way that suddenly makes more sense. You start noticing patterns you didn't see before. It's like your mind doesn't shut off when you're alone. It wakes up. And if you've ever sat there completely still but somehow deeply engaged with your own thought, you know exactly what that feels like. It's not boredom, it's presence. But here's where it gets a little more complicated, because having a rich inner world isn't just about thinking more, it's about feeling more too. You notice things other people don't. The slight change in someone's tone, the pause before they answer, the way a conversation feels, not just what's being said. And sometimes you don't even know how to explain it. You just know something feels off. And this is where a lot of people start to misunderstand you. They might think you're distant or quiet or in your own head. But what they don't see is that your mind isn't empty. It's processing constantly, and that takes energy. So when you step away from people, when you choose to be alone, it's not rejection, it's recovery. It's your way of recalibrating after taking in so much. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine you spend a few hours around a group of people. Maybe it was fun, maybe you laughed, maybe everything seemed fine on the surface. But later that night, you're lying there, replaying small moments. Did I say too much there? Why did that comment feel slightly off? Maybe I should have responded differently. And even if nothing was wrong, your mind keeps going. Not because you're broken, but because your brain is wired to reflect. Psychologists sometimes describe this as higher levels of introspection and sensitivity to internal experiences. In simple terms, your mind doesn't just experience life, it examines it. And that's a double-edged sword, because on one side, it gives you depth, self-awareness, the ability to understand emotions, your own and other people's, in a way that feels almost intuitive. But on the other side, it can feel heavy, like your mind is always on, always observing, always trying to make sense of things that other people just move past. And this is where solitude becomes something more than just preference. It becomes necessary. Because when you're alone, something shifts, the noise fades, the pressure disappears. And for the first time in a while, your thoughts don't feel crowded, they feel organized, clearer, almost quieter. And this is the part most people don't realize. Being alone isn't what makes you feel peaceful. Understanding yourself is, and solitude just gives you the space to do that. Now here's something even deeper. People who enjoy being alone often aren't avoiding connection, they're just not satisfied with shallow connection. They crave something more real, more honest, more meaningful, because when your inner world is rich, surface-level conversations start to feel empty, not wrong, just incomplete. You've probably felt this before. You're in a group, people are talking, laughing, everything seems fine. But inside there's this quiet disconnect, like you're present but not really there. And a thought crosses your mind. I'd rather be alone than feel like this. That thought can feel confusing, even a little isolating. But it actually reveals something important. You're not trying to escape people, you're trying to find depth. And until you find it, solitude feels better than pretending. But we'll come back to that in a moment, because there's another side to this trait that almost no one talks about. When you spend a lot of time in your own mind, you start building a relationship with yourself. Not the version of you that shows up for other people. The real one. The one that exists when no one is watching. And that relationship changes things. You become less dependent on external validation, less affected by what people think, less likely to shape yourself just to fit in, because you already know who you are when you're alone. And that's rare. Most people don't spend enough time with themselves to reach that point. They're constantly distracted, constantly reacting, constantly looking outward. So when they're finally alone, it feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, but for you it feels natural, like returning to something steady, something real. And this is where it gets interesting again. Because this trait, the ability to enjoy being alone, isn't about isolation, it's about independence, emotional independence. You don't need constant input to feel okay. You don't need noise to feel alive. Your mind already gives you enough to work with, and that's a quiet kind of strength. But like any strength, it comes with a risk, because if you're not careful, solitude can slowly turn into avoidance, not because you want it to, but because it's easier, safer, predictable. You don't have to deal with misunderstandings or disappointment or the effort of trying to connect with people who don't quite see things the way you do. And over time, your world can start to shrink without you noticing. So the question isn't whether being alone is good or bad. That's too simple. The real question is, why do you choose it? Is it because it brings you clarity? Or because it protects you from something? And only you can answer that honestly. But here's what I want you to understand. If you enjoy being alone because your mind feels alive in that space, because you can think, reflect, create, and understand yourself more deeply, then that's not something to fix. That's something to value. Because in a world that constantly pulls your attention outward, being able to sit with yourself without needing to escape is rare and powerful. It means your mind isn't a place you run from. It's a place you can live in comfortably. And once you have that, connection becomes a choice, not a necessity. You don't seek people to fill a void. You choose them because they add something meaningful to a life that already feels full. And that changes everything. So the next time you find yourself choosing solitude, don't rush to label it. Don't assume something is wrong. Instead, pause for a second and notice what your mind is doing in that space. Is it empty, or is it quietly unfolding into something deeper? Because if it's the second one, you're not alone in the way people think. You're connected and just in a different direction. So I'm curious, when you're alone with your thoughts, does it feel peaceful? Or does it feel like something you're trying to escape? If you've ever felt this but didn't know how to explain it, you're not the only one. And if this puts something into words you've been feeling for a long time, you might want to stay for the next one.